I'm Lana, and today I'm revisiting the lost Disney classic, Kingdom of the Sun. Back in 1988, George Scribner was sitting on top of the world. He had just famously directed Disney's Oliver and Company, which grossed $121 million worldwide against a $31 million budget. Not too shabby. Sure, it was far from the top-grossing movie that year, but in all fairness, it had some pretty big competition. Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out that year, as did The Land Before Time. And there was also a theatrical re-release of Bambi that did really well, because people like to see the mothers of cute cartoon characters get brutally gunned down, I guess. But I digress. Understandably, George Scribner was Disney's golden boy, and it looked as though he could do no wrong. So, just 2 years later, Disney executives asked Scribner to direct another animated feature called King of the Jungle, which was supposed to be a kind of animated National Geographic special about life on the African Serengeti. And if things had gone differently, there's a good chance that Scribner could have worked some of his magic on the project, and kids in the 90s could have learned a little about African wildlife from a narrated animated documentary. But of course, that's not what happened at all. As powerful as Scribner's magic was, he was no match for the aspirations of his co-director, Roger Allers. Allers was a force to be reckoned with. He was a visionary who had writing credits on films like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and even Aladdin. And Allers and his team had some far-out ideas for the King of the Jungle project. They envisioned a Macbeth-style epic featuring talking cartoon lions. And of course, this was all going to be set to the music of Elton John. Scribner was replaced by Roger Allers, and King of the Jungle was reborn as The Lion King. Hey, now wait a second. You weren't just about to click away now, were you? I know, you didn't hit play on Kingdom of the Sun just to hear about The Lion King. But listen, I'm going to give you what I don't think anyone else ever has. I'm going to lay out the entire plot of this canceled film for you, beat for beat, with details you may never even have heard before. There's even going to be some audio clips. You know, secrets revealed and all of that clickbaity kind of talk. So, sorry for the preamble. I'm going to get there. So just indulge me a little while longer, okay? Now, where was I? Oh yeah, it's 1994 and Roger Allers is Disney's new golden boy. Right, got it. So, as the opening track of The Lion King teaches us all, there is most definitely a circle of life. Scribner was out, Allers was in. And I'm sure you can guess exactly what Allers' fate will be at the end of this story. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Lion King was an unbelievably massive hit, if you haven't heard by now. And Tom Schumacher, who was the then vice president of Disney Feature Animation, asked Allers to direct another animated film set in a Latin American-themed world. Allers gladly accepted, opting to create a musical about an Incan prince and a llama herder who exchange places with one another. And this film would be called Kingdom of the Sun. It would feature Incan mythology, humor, romance, and some of the plot themes from a novel called The Prisoner of Zinda, which tells a Prince and the Pauper tale of a common man and a king who trade places. It sounds like an unusual recipe for a film, but this is the guy whose team married the idea of Elton John's music with talking animals on the African Serengeti. Who's going to question him? Actress and singer Eartha Kitt was brought on board to play the villain, David Spade to play an arrogant Incan prince, Owen Wilson to play the llama-herding protagonist, and Carla Gugino of Troop Beverly Hills to play an Incan princess. And since The Lion King had been such a great vehicle for Elton John and Tim Rice, Disney called upon a new super duo of musicians to write songs for this new animated musical. And they chose David Hartley and Sting, who would compose and record 6 original songs for the film. So far, so good, right? Well, then a co-director was brought on board. Mark Dindal. Cue the co-director theme again. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. If you remember what happened when King of the Jungle got a co-director, I'm sure you can guess exactly where this story is headed. But unlike King of the Jungle, we know quite a lot about what happened behind the scenes when it comes to Kingdom of the Sun. Remember those songs by Sting? Well, when he was brought on board, one of the conditions of his involvement in the project was that his wife Trudy be permitted to make a documentary about the film with her friend, director John Paul Davidson. That documentary is called The Sweatbox, named after an unair-conditioned screening room at Disney's animation studios in Burbank. Now, The Sweatbox doesn't portray Disney executives in a flattering light at all. It tells the story of Sting's involvement with the movie and showcases his writing process alongside some behind-the-scenes footage of the animation team bringing everything to life. Once the documentary had screened, Disney immediately canned it and made sure that it would receive no further release, probably because they didn't care for the more revealing behind-the-scenes moments featuring studio executives. Let's just say that they appear as less than gracious to the artists involved. The film has long since leaked out onto the internet, and although Disney has repeatedly pulled it from all the usual streaming sites, it always manages to resurface. And it's this documentary that's given Kingdom of the Sun its fan base. Once you've seen it, it's hard to deny that Kingdom of the Sun looks like it might have been kind of great. Former chair of Disney Michael Eisner said that Kingdom of the Sun had all the ingredients of a great Disney animated classic. There's everything you'd expect. There's a villain with supernatural powers, a hero with humble beginnings, a princess with a strong moral compass who wins his heart, and catchy songs that will burrow deep into your subconscious like the wonderful little musical parasites that they are. Sounds like the kind of great show you expect, right? Well, unfortunately, that was the problem. You see, there was a magazine article that came out during the production of the movie that really left an impression on the heads of the studio. Basically, it broke down all of Disney's classic animated films into their basic ingredients. A hero, a princess, a villain, comedic side characters, and so on. All for the sake of proving that all of these movies are essentially the same. Obviously, it's a criticism that's very true. But it's a little like complaining that most every punk rock show is made up of a guitarist, a bassist, and a drummer. Or that oil paintings are all too often done on canvas. That's just the medium of the art, and it's a ridiculous criticism. But, ridiculous or not, studio heads Tom Schumacher and Peter Schneider didn't want to be known as the guys who were releasing another paint-by-numbers film. The work of Roger Allers seemed a little too samey to them all of a sudden, and they weren't at all impressed with the screening of the film's work print. And the too long, didn't-read version of the story is that Roger Allers ultimately left the project behind, even though the majority of the film had already been made. Those who have followed the legend of this missing film have wondered for almost 30 years. What exactly did the studio head see in this screening? What happened on screen? And just how much of the story do we really know today? Well, believe it or not, we surprisingly know quite a lot. We don't have a script, but we do have a synopsis, the production art, a few brief moments of released animation, and our intuition to help us fill in the gaps. While obviously not all of the details are known, we can piece together a reasonably accurate outline thanks to the character breakdown sheets and story beats uploaded to Lost Media Archives and a handful of other sites. Now, a lot of story beats are consistent across all sources, but some unfortunately aren't, which I'll do my best to break down as we go along. Anyway, the following, to the best of our knowledge, is likely what we would have seen in Kingdom of the Sun. In the beginning, the voice of a narrator tells us, there was only darkness and chaos. And this darkness had a name, Supai. The creator, Viracocha, was not pleased. So Viracocha threw a rope up to a distant star and drew it down to the earth. This star was Inti, or as we call it, the sun. Inti battled Supai and imprisoned him deep beneath the earth. The earth then became a place of light and life. When Inti saw this, he dropped a fiery tear of joy to the earth And this tier became the Incan people. The Incas built a sacred city over the spot of Supai's imprisonment. And from this sacred city, a mighty kingdom grew. To protect his people, Inti set his mark upon just one to rule, to ensure that his light would always shine on the kingdom of the sun. In the next scene, high in the mountains of ancient Peru, we meet a herd of llamas, along with a spirited young llama herder named Pacha, who's played by Owen Wilson.
Wow.
In a piece of production art that was probably intended for this scene, we see Pacha shivering as he sleeps in the cold wind of the dark mountainside, curled up against one of his llamas. He lives an isolated but happy existence, and there's an animatic in the sweatbox that shows Pacha wake up on the mountain trail and raise his arms into the sky as he yells in exaltation to the warmth of the rising sun. And a nearby nest full of baby birds respond in surprise to the excitement. Pacha tells his llamas that today is market day and that it's time to be sheared. This is met with some resistance by Pacha's prized llama, Snowball. And you've really got to check out the production art of Snowball on my Blue Sky, because she's pretty cute, as are all of the llamas. There are 7 of them, kind of like Snow White's 7 dwarfs, and they all have appropriately goofy production names. Apart from Snowball, there's Dusty, Buddy, Grace, Stretch, who's the tallest one naturally, Nellie, and a round one called Beano. Pacha explains to Snowball that there's no need to worry about being sheared. He says that her fleece will grow back and that there's no cause for alarm. But she's not having it. Now, in some versions of this story, the mere mention of being sheared sends all of the llamas bolting off in a panic. Whether or not this happens, we do know that Pacha is able to pacify all of the llamas by playing his pan flute and then singing Walk the Llama Llama, the song that introduces the audience to the importance of llamas in Incan culture. Okay. Full disclosure, this is a re-upload. I did previously upload this episode with music from the film, some of which you may never even have heard before. But other podcasters convinced me that Disney would come after me with cleavers. Now, I seriously doubt that Disney even knows that I exist. But since dying is the #1 cause of death in the world today, I figured that I would just err on the side of caution and leave the music out. But so as not to disappoint anyone, I'm going to play this super deep cut. It goes like this. There, wasn't that great? Now, anyway, Pacha, like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, leads the swaying llamas down the mountain trail. And by the time they've reached the end of the song, Pacha realizes that they are totally and completely lost. But Pacha's momentary panic is interrupted by the sound of drums, coming from an impressive procession moving above them. So Pacha and his llamas scramble to get a better look. And at the head of this procession, they see a brilliantly clothed man, who, as fate would have it, surprisingly looks exactly like Pacha. This guy is Prince Manco, soon to be crowned Emperor Manco, and he's played by none other than David Spade.
Oh, you'll see how cool I am.
There's an amazing piece of production art by Marcello Vignali that shows Prince Manco standing on top of a pyramid of llamas like some kind of holier-than-thou royal cheerleader, as an entourage of onlookers cheer his procession onward. And when the procession reaches a dead end, Prince Manco removes a small stone figure that's strung around his neck. And this little figure is very much alive. This little stone figure is Waka, a 10,000-year-old Incan totem, and he's played by Harvey Fierstein.
I am a 10,000-year-old rock.
Waka prays to the stones that stretch out in front of Manco's procession, and the stones before them seemingly come alive and blow away the mountain mists to reveal a golden city. Awestruck, Pacha realizes that this could be the legendary sacred city, the site of Inti's victory over Supai. But Pacha's jolted out of his reverie when he sees Snowball smugly riding on the back of Manco's llama pyramid. So Pacha and his llamas chase Snowball into the city. Thankfully, Pacha is able to retrieve a reluctant Snowball from Manko's llama-cade. But their escape is thwarted by the Imperial Guards, who seemingly mistake Pacha for one of the royal llama herders. They force him to stand with the other llama herders assembled outside of the Temple of the Sun, all waiting to greet the returning Prince Manko. Also present to greet the Emperor-to-be is Yzma, the High Priestess of the Sacred City. She is the city's resident silver fox, and also the villain of our story, played, of course, by the late great Eartha Kitt.
Where is he?
She welcomes Manko as he parades back into the city, and she announces that he is to be crowned emperor tomorrow. And she advises Manko to choose a llama to sacrifice in honor of his coronation. Manko's not overly interested, and he selects a llama completely at random. And as fate would have it, he, of course, chooses Snowball. Cue the co-director theme again. Pacha protests, but he's roughly pushed back by the guards. And in the scuffle, he hits his head and he's knocked out cold. This, of course, prevents him from coming face to face with his double, Prince Manko. I guess the guards never get a good look at Pacha either, because for some reason, they completely fail to notice that he looks exactly like the Emperor-to-be. Anyway, Yzma reminds the prince that tonight he will choose one of her Maidens of the Sun as his future bride and empress. Manko isn't overly interested and exits with Waka, and Yzma takes the opportunity to make her own exit. Down to the catacombs far beneath the sacred city, where the mummies of the dead are laid to rest. There's an absolutely amazing piece of production art of the catacombs, where we see a winding stairway descending into the darkness. And at the bottom of this stairway, we see this massive round metal grating in the floor that's shaped like the sun, with its rays spanning out from the center to form a kind of grating, like a giant solar drain. And from this sun-shaped grating, long dark tendrils reach out into the open air like some kind of hellish black octopus. This is Supai, the imprisoned Lord of Darkness. Supai speaks to Yzma through the many mummies whose bodies line the walls of Supai's tomb. And when you think about all of these mummies speaking in unison like the Borg from Star Trek, you have to admit that that's a really creepy vibe for a Disney animated feature. I know the Black Cauldron had a very strong macabre element to it, but Supai speaking through a legion of dead Incans is on a whole other level. So what do the mummies/Supai say? Well, Supai wants Yzma to kill the one who bears the mark of the sun, Manko. And the mark in question isn't at all metaphorical. Manko literally has a sun tattooed, for lack of a better word, on his upper arm. Supai says that soon there will be a great eclipse, and that once Manko is dead, nothing will prevent Supai from escaping during the eclipse and reclaiming the world as his own once again. So why is Yzma going along with all of this? Well, in exchange for killing Manko, Yzma wants to be young and beautiful once again, and to reclaim the power she once had when she had love-struck people at her beck and call. This scene has one of these standout musical performances by Eartha Kitt. Yzma's song, Snuff Out the Light. The song tells the story of her father, the Mortician, who could defy the aging effects of the sun when he prepared his deceased clients for their final rites. As Yzma sings, she's joined by a chorus of singing monsters, spirits, and mummies. And the internet would have us believe that 3 of these mummies have names: Mick, Bowie, and Lemmy, obviously inspired by their real-life rock star namesakes. Now, there's no direct reference to them in any synopsis of the film, and I haven't ever seen any leaked production art of any of the mummies that names them directly. So take this piece of lore with a grain of salt. If they did actually exist, it's probably safe to assume that they would have been comedic side characters, kind of like Scar's 3 hyena minions from The Lion King. Now, there is a relatively well-known production drawing online that shows 3 mummies covering parts of their faces like Sansaru. You know, the famous Japanese hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil depiction of the three monkeys, each covering their eyes, ears, and mouth respectively? Now, these mummies really don't look like the aforementioned rock stars. So it may just be a comedic image of mummies that was pitched for the movie, with placeholder names created for animators as a kind of in-joke. Honestly, it's kind of hard to imagine the mummies in this movie as being overly comedic when they're collectively being used as a PA system for the Lord of Darkness. Then again, we know from some of the amazing animation seen in the Sweatbox documentary that the mummies do sing, dance, and interact with Yzma. So there may have been 3 mummies who had a comedic role. And maybe they had no voices of their own. Maybe they were something akin to the great comedy stars of the silent movie era. We could speculate forever. Anyway, at this point, the story takes a short break from the antagonists and brings us back to our hero. In the next scene, day has turned to night. Pacha has regained consciousness, but he's all alone now. I guess the other llama herders must have taken charge of Pacha's llamas while he was knocked out. And it looks like they just left him for dead outside of the palace. What an awesome bunch of people. Anyway, remembering that Snowball is likely being readied for sacrifice, Pacha sneaks into the palace to search for her. And while sneaking quietly through the hallways, Pacha sees Manko choosing his bride-to-be. All of the Maidens of the Sun are gathered there, hoping to catch Manko's eye. All of them are hoping to be chosen. Well, all of them except for Nina, a headstrong young woman played by Carla Gugino.
Oh, I just remembered. I have to go beat myself silly with a large stick. If I'm not back in time, you can just start without me.
And, as luck would have it, she's of course the one that Manko chooses. Now, even though it appears that Manko has chosen his bride-to-be in much the same way that he chose the sacrificial llama, that is, with total disinterest and seemingly at random, Waka reveals the true reason that Manko has chosen Nina.
What Manko was going for was not devout. What he was looking for was a knockout, which that Nina certainly is.
Now, we don't know a lot about Nina's character other than the fact that she's described as fiery and stubborn, she cares for llamas, and she has a special sense of reverence in her heart for the legend of Viracocha roping the sun. We have a precious few production art images of her, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of information on her, sadly. I almost wonder if she was introduced somewhere earlier in this story and that information has just been lost to us. Now, even though Pacha and Nina have yet to have their meet cute, one has to wonder if we see Pacha react to her presence here. Is it love at first sight? Whether it is or isn't, Pacha is a man on a mission. He's got to find his missing llama. So Pacha continues sneaking quietly through the hallways. As Pacha peers into each room, you really have to wonder what kind of comedic beats happened here. What did Pacha see? Of course, he eventually happens upon Snowball, freshly groomed and enjoying ridiculously luxurious chambers. He tells her that they've got to escape while they still can, but she has no intention of leaving. I'd like to think that Pacha brings up being sheared again to motivate her with a little fear, but there's no record of that. He does, however, play his panpipe to lure her out. And, as expected, it works like a charm. But that, of course, leads to a new problem. Who else can hear those panpipes? And what will they do to Pacha if they catch him? The word sacrifice has been bandied around pretty freely in this story, after all. Now, as you probably expect, Pacha and Snowball suddenly hear approaching voices, and they have to duck into a room to hide. This room, as fate would have it, is Prince Manko's lavish bedroom. It's empty for the time being, but the approaching voices are revealed to be Yzma and Waka coming down the hallway. Here we get a glimpse of their antagonistic relationship. They're constantly bickering. The two are quickly joined by Manko, who announces that he is going out. Protesting, the diminutive Waka pushes the prince back into his bedroom, where Pacha and Snowball are currently hiding. Manko says he wants to go to the local tavern, but Waka forbids it and orders Manko to bed. Waka and Yzma then leave, sealing a stone door closed behind them. As Manko settles into his room, he discovers Pacha, and assuming he's an assassin, vows to kill him. But before he can, Pacha points out something remarkable. The two of them are doubles.
Whoa.
We're twins.
Impossible.
No, then I bet we're distant cousins because we look exactly alike.
The only difference? Pacha does not bear the royal birthmark, the mark of the sun.
Only one of royal descent bears the mark of the sun.
Oh, wow. Is that like a tattoo?
Hey, don't touch. It's a birthmark.
Oh, I've got one of those too, but mine sort of looks like a moon. See right there?
Yeah.
Manko is furious that a lowly llama herder could look like him,
I can't believe I look like a commoner.
so he draws his sword to kill him. But before Manko can cast his fell blow, Pacha makes an intriguing suggestion.
No, wait. Listen to this. One me would do the things I don't want to do, while the other me is having fun.
If Pacha stays in Manko's room, Manko can go to the tavern, and when Waka checks in, the little stone totem will be none the wiser when he sees Pacha asleep in Manko's bed. Manko is into this idea,
Suddenly, I'm not so depressed.
and he agrees. So Manko departs for the tavern, and Snowball follows him closely behind, presumably to help him look the part convincingly and to get Snowball as far out of harm's way as is possible. Pacha then settles down into the lap of luxury and exhales a breath of relief. 2 deaths avoided in 1 evening. It's a lot for him to process. In the next scene, we see Yzma's diabolical laboratory, where she's making a poison to carry out her end of the bargain with Supai. There's a great scene from the sweatbox where we see Yzma test out her poison on an unsuspecting Venus flytrap that quickly chokes and dies as Yzma sighs in perverse satisfaction. Suddenly, Yzma sees Manko slipping away from the palace to visit the tavern. I guess she sees him through a window, and she quickly grabs the poison to follow after him. The eclipse will be happening soon, and she's got no time to waste. Somehow, in her haste, she grabs the wrong vial. Not a lot is known about this scene. How does Yzma grab the wrong potion immediately after this very calculated and morbid bench test on the Venus flytrap? Are the comedic antics of side characters like Mick, Bowie, and Lemmy somehow involved in the mix-up? We don't really know. But with the wrong bottle in hand, Yzma follows after Manko. Manko arrives at the local tavern and soon has the adoring patrons kissing his feet. Literally.
I can't believe I've been here this long and no one's kissed my feet.
Yzma follows the prince and hovers unseen outside of a window. And when the moment is right, she slips the poison into Manko's cup. After taking the last drink from his poisoned cup, Manko suddenly feels ill and stumbles out of the tavern and into the night. So, if you've seen The Emperor's New Groove, and let's be honest, unless you're a couple of decades behind on your cartoon binges, you've seen it. You know exactly where this scene is headed. Yzma follows the sickened Manko out of the tavern only to see the horrific spectacle of his transformation into a llama. She realizes that she's used the wrong potion. Yzma slowly approaches the stunned llama prince, a dagger held high over her head. Man or beast, Manko will die tonight. But Manko bolts away and leads Yzma on a wild chase, which ends in a llama pen, where Manko hides among the multitudes of other llamas. He has successfully become an undetectable needle in a haystack. And Snowball, who is somehow also in this llama pen, sees him and is immediately smitten, adding a comic beat and relieving some tension to an otherwise stressful sequence. Now, if you're wondering how Snowball got here, you're not alone. And she's not the only missing puzzle piece here either. It seems that Pacha's other llamas are here as well. How? I don't know. Maybe this is where the royal llama herders brought them after Pacha was knocked out. But that still doesn't explain how Snowball got here. Didn't Mako put her in this llama pen before he went into the tavern? And after his transformation into a llama, how exactly does he get into the pen? It's not as though he'd have hands to open a gate. Drop me a message if you worked this out. Anyway, Llama Mako would seem to be completely safe in this llama pen, except for one thing. His fur still bears the mark of the sun, and a very determined Yzma is still searching for him. But in the middle of the night, in a kingdom filled with llamas, a needle with a sun mark is still a needle in a haystack. So Llama Mako is safe, for now. In the next scene, Waka tiptoes into the royal bedroom to see a sleeping Pacha, who he of course assumes is Mako. In a quiet aside, Waka expresses his disappointment with the future emperor, and with humans in general. Yet he knows that Mako is the heart of the empire, and prays that he grows worthy of his position. Waka then leaves Pacha to rest from the stresses of the day, and what's probably a pretty dangerous head injury. I mean, should this guy even be sleeping at all? This is kind of terrifying, but I digress. Anyway, Waka exits. Just before dawn, Waka wakes Pacha, still believing that he's Mako. While being readied for the coronation, Pacha tries to explain to Waka that he's not Mako, but he can't get Waka to listen to him, until he shows the little stone statue that he doesn't have the royal birthmark. Waka panics. The coronation is at dawn. Seeing Pacha's resemblance to Mako, Waka decides to strike a bargain. If Pacha can successfully masquerade as Mako for the day, which will give Waka time to find the real prince, Pacha will get 100 llamas in return. And as we all know from the song, Walk the Llama Llama, what could possibly be more valuable than that? I know, I should have played the song for you, but I don't want my fledgling little show to be taken down. It's all I have. Don't at me, okay? Anyway, meanwhile, Yzma is still searching high and low among the llamas for Llama Mako, with no luck whatsoever. We can only wonder if she's getting dangerously close when she suddenly hears horns announcing the commencement of the coronation. How could there possibly be a coronation with no Prince Mako there to be crowned? Has Mako somehow transformed back into his former self? She rushes back to the palace to see what's up. Back at the palace, Waka coaches a nervous Pacha through the ceremony, and as expected, Yzma arrives. She expects that at any moment the apparently re-transformed Mako will kill her. But when the Mako imposter she meets strangely bears no animosity towards her at all, she figures he doesn't remember what happened. Pacha is crowned emperor, presumably in front of a crowd of cheering masses. And it's here that he's joined by Nina, his bride-to-be. Pacha, of course, falls hopelessly in love. She, of course, resents the imposter Mako, unsurprisingly. Pacha and Nina are paraded through the streets in the royal llama litter, or as I like to call it, the llama-cade. Pacha tries to make conversation with Nina here, but Nina gives him a chilly reception. And Waka worries that Pacha will blow it if he talks too much. At this point, it's unclear how Llama Mako comes back into the picture. Either the llama-cade passes by the llama pen where he's held, or he's somehow escaped to exact his revenge upon Yzma. But either way, he shows up. Llama Mako sees Pacha in his place, and he's outraged at the sight of the lowly llama herder wearing his crown. And Llama Mako frantically tries to make his way up to the llama-cade. But whenever he gets close to Pacha, the royal guards chase him away. Desperate, Llama Mako opens up the llama pen, releasing hundreds of llamas into the road, who create a huge llama jam that stops the parade cold. To Waka's absolute horror, Pacha hops down from the llama-cade to help. The crowd is shocked. The emperor is walking on common ground. Waka commands Pacha to get back into the llama-cade. But Pacha launches into a catchy tune that soon has the crowd and the llamas swaying to the music. This is our reprise of Walk the Llama Llama. Pacha gets the llamas to follow him to the llama pen, where they're safely fenced in once again. By the end of the song, Pacha has stolen the people's hearts. No one recognizes Llama Manco. Then he's herded back into the pen with the other llamas. Once alone, Waka scolds Pacha for defying the hierarchy of the empire, and he commands him to wait in the emperor's chambers while he searches for the real Manco. Pacha regretfully does as he's told and waits all afternoon, but Manco and Waka don't return. A servant pops his head into Pacha's room and announces that everything is ready for the coronation banquet. Pacha panics and sneaks away to the llama pen to talk his llamas into leaving. However, the servants bring the banquet to him there, in the llama pen of all places. And yes, this is the same llama pen where Pacha led the llamas from the parade earlier that day. The city's nobility are all seated at the banquet table, as is Nina, and they're all watching Pacha with a scrutinizing eye. To add a little further surrealism to this already really unusual scene of a banquet happening inside of a llama pen, the guests are serenaded by a group of local musicians who are there to honor the event. And on a personal note, I'm a little disappointed to say that none of these musicians resemble Sting at all. A missed opportunity, I feel. Anyway, there's a little piece of missing context in the story here, because Pacha invites peasants to join the feast, much to the surprise of the nobility seated at the table. So, where did these salt-of-the-earth people come from exactly? Were they the servers? Are they llama herders? Is there a group of onlookers somewhere? I don't know. But as the peasants are seated, the nobles begin to question Pacha about his plans for the future, wondering what kind of rain they can expect from him. And Pacha struggles to keep his head above water as the questions fly, and the nobles begin to project unintended meanings onto Pacha's answers. And it's here that Pacha expresses his sympathy for the working masses of the kingdom. And he outlines a simple program for sharing with those who have too little. Nina is impressed, and Manco is shocked when all applaud this new idea. Meanwhile, Yzma shows up at the banquet with concealed weapons, looking to finish the job. Llama Manco sees her and hides under the table, cowering in fear. Yzma tries to assassinate Pacha, but her attempts are repeatedly thwarted. And at least one of her attempts involves the same tactic that she used before, slipping Pacha a Mickey. Does she have more than one vial of poison? Did she head back to her lab to retrieve the correct one? I don't know, but the attempt fails, resulting in her dropping the vial, which hits the ground and rolls under the table. She ducks under the table to retrieve the vial and runs headfirst into the hiding Llama Manco. It's at this moment that Yzma begins to realize what's actually been going on. Manco tries to make a run for it, but Yzma chases him, catches him, ties him down, and prepares to offer the llama sacrifice. But thankfully, Snowball charges to the rescue, and with the rest of Pacha's llamas, drives Yzma off. Seeing this, Pacha lays down a new law: no more llama sacrifices. Nina is impressed, and obviously feeling satisfied with his first decree, Pacha invites the banquet guests to dance. And we can only guess that Pacha and Nina likely dance together at this point, and the audience is treated to a little of that Lady and the Tramp style prolonged, love-struck eye contact. Meanwhile, a frustrated Waka is still searching for Manco. We don't really have any details on this scene other than that he's combing the city. There might have been some comedic callbacks to the earlier scene where Pacha was searching for Snowball and peering into random rooms, but that's just speculation on my part. And while we're on the topic of wild speculation, I think it's also likely that this scene would have included one of Sting's musical numbers. That song is Why Can't a Human Be More Like a Rock? This song is supposed to be a kind of homage to Rex Harrison's Why Can't a Woman Be More Like a Man from My Fair Lady. Tonally, this scene gives us a little bit of levity between Yzma's latest murder attempt and her inevitable return to the catacombs to report into Supai once again. When we do finally see Yzma slink back down to the catacombs far beneath the Temple of the Sun, she very gently tries to break the news of Manko's survival to Supai. He's, of course, enraged. She has only one more chance, he warns her. Llama or human, Manko must die. Now, it's not clear what kind of punishment Supai can enforce while he's imprisoned here, but since he can speak through the remains of the dead, Yzma probably figures that it's best not to try to find out. Besides, the eclipse is coming soon, and Yzma's window of opportunity to regain her youth is quickly disappearing. As a side note, I'm not really sure what kind of visual cues the audience would have gotten that would convince us of Supai's ability to turn back time on someone's appearance. But Yzma seems pretty well convinced. She seems pretty desperate for power, and maybe a little love. And it's a Disney movie, so you gotta have a little bit of love. And if you were wondering when the always expected Disney love song was coming, this is our moment. In our next scene, Nina takes Pacha, followed in the distance by Llama Manko, up the moonlit mountainside at night, to the site where Viracocha roped the sun. Here there stands a statue of Viracocha, the creator god himself, holding a rope in commemoration of the moment when he roped Inti, the sun, and pulled it down to earth to battle Supai. It's here that Nina confesses that she could not love yesterday's Manko, but she feels something for the man that he seems to have become today. She wants assurance that he will not change back, but Pacha, of course, can't give her that reassurance. Unaware that the llama watching them from a distance is actually Manko, Pacha thinks that the doppelganger prince will soon return to reclaim his crown. And here is where we hear the song that Sting wrote for Pacha and Nina. One day, she'll love me. When Llama Manko witnesses this, he slinks away, overcome with a sadness that seems to signal the beginnings of a character arc for him. Maybe he's just sad that he lost his randomly chosen bride-to-be. But this is Disney. Love songs are a big deal in Disney movies, and they're always huge turning points in these stories. That's especially true of this song. It delves into the innermost hopes and fears of both Nina and Pacha, and it's incredible. Director Roger Allers appeared on the Skull Rock podcast in 2024, and he mentioned that all of the songs for this film, including this amazing love song, were completely recorded and ready for the soundtrack. Now, a quick internet search will allow you to hear Sting's version of the song, but Allers said that there's a completed version of the song that features the voice talents that we would have heard in the film. It's a track that's probably lost to time, but what I wouldn't give to hear that recording. Anyway, at the close of the song, we return to Waka, still searching. Waka has searched everywhere and found no sign of Manko. He vows not to give up. Even when we see him walk past what the synopsis calls evidence of Manko's transformation. Does this mean that Waka visits the tavern and finds the vial? Does that mean that he visits Yzma's diabolical lab where she's got her various assortments of witch's brew poured into different containers? Whatever the case, it's probably safe to assume that the audience is led to believe that at any moment, Waka will put two and two together. But he continues to overlook what's so obvious to us. And to make matters worse, time is running out for everyone in this story. The eclipse is coming soon. And that's not all. As Pacha and Nina make their way back down the mountainside, Nina reminds Pacha that their marriage is only a few hours away. Pacha is heartbroken, knowing that he must soon leave. As he starts to tell Nina the truth, he's interrupted by the sounds of sacrificial drums in the distance. Nina says that it must be Yzma summoning everyone to a ceremony. I think we're meant to believe that this could be the wedding in question. Nina races off, leaving Pacha with his confession unfinished. So, of course, he rushes after her. In our next scene, Pacha and Nina arrive at the temple, but the ceremony that they find in progress is not what they expected at all. Standing before a huge crowd in front of the massive Temple of the Sun, Yzma has Lama Menko tied up on an altar and ready to slaughter. She's obviously captured him in an off-screen moment that the audience probably should have seen, but hey, this is the story. Now, also present to officiate the sacrifice is Waka, though of course he doesn't know the true identity of the sacrificial llama. To him, this is just business as usual. But usual or not, Nina isn't about to let harm befall what she believes to be an innocent llama. Nina reminds Yzma that llama sacrifice has been forbidden, but as we all know, Yzma is well aware that that mandate came from an imposter, and even if it hadn't, Yzma, like the internet's once viral honey badger, doesn't care at all. Pacha demands that Yzma release the llama. If you can't guess what her response is, please refer to my previous statement about the honey badger. Now, we know quite a lot about this scene thanks to one of the artists who worked on the film, Antonio Navarro. His blog has storyboards, or as he calls them, workbooks, of this and a couple of other scenes from the film. Credit should also go to a YouTuber named GreatBeast455, who brought these storyboards to life with some music and a little voiceover work. Anyway, I think it's probably at this very moment we see the guards remove Lama Menko from the altar at Pacha's command, and Yzma chases after them yelling, "Wait!" Waka then leaps up to Pacha's chest to reprimand him. "What do you think you're doing?" he protests. "You're a llama herder, a nobody. You can't just rewrite the rules. If you don't sacrifice the llama, Inti won't shine on you." And at that moment, a glorious beam of light breaks through the mountain peaks and illuminates Pacha. Yzma shields her eyes from the overwhelming beams of light that seem to radiate from Pacha now. He may not be the real emperor, but his right to rule now seems unquestionable in the eyes of everyone watching. And she's not having that. In front of a stunned crowd of onlookers, Yzma rips off Pacha's sleeve, revealing clean, bare skin, no mark of the sun. Yzma proclaims that Pacha is a fraud and condemns him to death.
This act of highest treason has but one punishment: death! Guards!
Waka, struggling up the steps to the altar, confesses in front of everyone that it was he who had Pacha take the prince's place. Yzma reviles the little stone statue as she tries to solidify her position of power and authority. But as she's ranting, Waka recognizes the mark of the sun in Lama Menko's fleece. And finally, the puzzle that Waka has spent the majority of the film trying to piece together is solved at last. He realizes that this llama is the arrogant and bratty Menko. But it's too late for him to make anything positive happen with his discovery. The royal guards arrive and begin to drag Pacha away. But before they can, Nina begs Pacha for the truth. And it's here that Pacha tells Nina that he loves her. And suddenly, the square begins to darken. The eclipse has come. The crowd panics. Yzma, realizing that there's not a moment to spare, knows that if she's gonna kill Menko, now is the time. The synopsis indicates that she frames this as a traditional offer of sacrifice to appease Inti, the sun. But before she can strike her fell blow, the guards holding Pacha are bowled over by a charging snowball, ridden by Waka. This sounds a little like the bowling for buzzards scene from The Lion King, where Pumbaa comes to the rescue with Timon riding on his back. Now, how is Snowball here and why exactly? I don't know. Because movie. Waka reveals to everyone that the llama about to be sacrificed is none other than Menko, the rightful ruler of the Incan Empire. Realizing that there's no time to waste, Yzma holds her dagger high above her head and stands at the ready over Manko. Pacha, Nina, Snowball, and Waka all rush to Manko's rescue, but they're too late. Yzma has killed Manko. And then they roll the credits. No, I'm kidding. Of course I don't roll the credits. But I was serious about Manko getting killed. Yzma got him. I guess we're meant to assume that she slaughtered him with a knife, which is pretty gruesome for a Disney film. But when you consider that earlier in the film, Manko was going to kill Pacha with a sword until Pacha convinced him of all the benefits of switching places, this all seems a little like poetic justice. But however you feel about Manko's fate, the story has much bigger problems on the horizon now. Yzma has officially fulfilled her end of the bargain with Supai, and the eclipse is now upon the sacred city. Yzma exults, and in a reprise of her signature song, Snuff Out the Light, Yzma says that soon Supai will rule the world, and she will be young and beautiful once again. The earth cracks open, and the horrific swirling figure of Supai fills the sky. Crowds panic, buildings topple, and Yzma begins to transform into her younger self. All appears lost. Even Waka, the 10,000-year-old rock with all the wisdom of the ages, has given up hope. Until Pacha implores him. Waka's the cornerstone of their civilization. He can't just give up. Now, if you remember from the beginning of the film, when Waka could pray before the rocks to reveal the sacred city, he's got some significant powers. He's our conduit to the spirit world. And this film needs a little deus ex machina. So Waka falls to his knees and begs Viracocha to deliver them from Supai's terror. Suddenly, the stones beneath Waka and Pacha's feet begin to rise, and the two are lifted up the mountainside up to the Viracocha stone, where the creator's statue stands with his rope in hand. The carved rope at the base of the statue magically transforms into a real rope, and Waka tells Pacha what he has to do. Pacha balks. Wasn't the last guy to do this a god? There's no way this could ever work. But all is falling apart around them. Even Waka begins to crumble. Throw the rope before it's too late, Waka implores as he turns into gravel. Pacha heaves the lasso towards the sun. It travels high into the air and unexpectedly disappears into the inky blackness that is Supai. The rope pulls taut, and Pacha struggles to pull the rope in. And strangely, the rope begins to pull back. It pulls Pacha across the ground until he teeters on the edge of the mountainside. And just before he's pulled over the edge, he suddenly stops. Pacha looks over his shoulder to see Nina, his llamas, and the people of the city are behind him, pulling on the rope, helping him. Yzma makes a last-ditch desperate effort to cut the rope, just as the brilliant figure of Inti, the sun, breaks through the darkness with a blinding light. Yzma is reduced to dust. Inti battles Supai and imprisons him under the earth once again, and great stones close up over his tomb. The epilogue to this story says that the city is righted, which I hope means that all of the rubble that had previously been buildings and infrastructure is restored to the way it was before Yzma literally let all hell break loose. Inti resurrects Manko and restores him to his human form, kind of like the prince at the end of Beauty and the Beast. Waka too is restored, and a newly humbled Manko kneels before Pacha and offers him his crown. But Pacha would rather return to his village. Manko gives his blessing to the union of Pacha and Nina, and Pacha leaves the sacred city with Nina in hand. And, if you remember, Pacha's held up his end of the bargain with Waka, so he also leaves with 100 extra llamas in tow as he returns to his village in another reprise of Walk the Llama Llama. So, now that you've heard the story, or at least my best facsimile of it, Do you think it sounds like the framework for a Disney masterpiece? As weird as it is to say, this is my favorite movie, and I've never even seen it. I've obsessively collected production art and anything I could find for years. I'm a huge Sting fan, and I think this would have been great. But the executives at Disney certainly didn't share my point of view. In fact, Disney executives Tom Schumacher and Peter Schneider weren't at all impressed by the screening of the film's work print.
For me, so much of the movie isn't working. I just don't know who I'm supposed to care about, what I'm watching. The pace seems really, really wacky, like just so leaden, and I'm not having much fun.
And we have not found a movie yet.
Now, while that may hardly sound like a death sentence for the movie, things took a turn when Sting expressed his appreciation for the film at this very same screening.
Well, I have to say, I enjoyed the movie far more than I thought I would.
Eh, shut up.
I really did. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, they told him to shut up. Sure, it was said in a joking tone. And that's the getaway. You really have to wonder if it was a joke or not. And whether or not it was, it's hardly what anyone wants to hear after years of work have been put into bringing something to life. So what happened next? Sting, understandably, wasn't too pleased, and the creative team that had been making a masterpiece was split into two teams, one headed by director Roger Allers, and the other headed by his co-director, Mark Dindal. Each team was tasked with making their own revised version of the story, and Disney would greenlight the one they liked the best. Yeah, they just threw everybody in the Thunderdome and said good luck. Dindal's team came up with an entirely new story, one that was far simpler and more focused on comedy. The studio loved it, and from there things got incredibly messy. Andreas Deha, the chief animator on Eartha Kitt's character, was unhappy with the new direction and left the project. Deha was one of the animators responsible for bringing to life movies like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King. And even though his character hadn't been cut from the story, the film that he had devoted himself to was suddenly gone. Just as Roger Allers had replaced the original director of the Lion King project, he too now was being replaced by his co-director, Mark Dindal. Roger resigned from the project, or at least that's the official story anyway. And unfortunately, his characters and story belonged to Disney, and they had no interest in preserving the story or characters as they were. Sting's music, which was an accompaniment to a story that was no longer being told, was completely thrown out. Sting quit several times, only to be coaxed back to work on a new version of the story by the film's producer. Kingdom of the Sun was renamed Kingdom in the Sun, and even for a time featured a performance from Batman's Adam West, interestingly enough. Before, as you probably already know, the film became The Emperor's New Groove. And the Disney chopping block wasn't done there. The entire film was scored by Mark Shaman, but when studio executives were unhappy with his work, they replaced him with John Debney. The character of Pacha was reworked from the ground up, and Owen Wilson was replaced by John Goodman. And Sting was tasked with writing 2 new songs for The Emperor's New Groove. Now, it would be all too easy to say that's the entertainment business, and at least we all got one great animated feature out of this. But in an era in which Disney remakes everything, it seems ridiculous that we should only be able to see one of the films to come out of this project. I think it's likely that someday companies like Disney will probably use AI to complete their unfinished films, but even that won't be the film that we want to see. Eartha Kitt is sadly no longer with us, but many of the professionals who brought this film to life still are, and it would be great if Disney would invest in finishing their work. But traditional animation unfortunately seems to be a thing of the past for Disney. When Kingdom of the Sun was being developed, we could have only dreamed of something like Disney Plus, proof positive that Disney audiences are willing to subscribe for more of their Disney favorites. As I mentioned before, Roger Allers made an appearance on the Skull Rock podcast back in 2024, and he said that Kingdom of the Sun was 3/4 of the way finished when it was canceled, and that the music was completely done. We know that the vocal performances were likely completely recorded, and that Disney definitely has the means of completing and releasing this film. Will they? Probably not. Unless you've seen the Sweatbox, watched some of the unreleased film footage on YouTube, or you've heard a podcast like this one, Kingdom of the Sun isn't likely to be on your radar as something you'd be interested in seeing. So, as with all missing media, it's up to you to keep the memory of Kingdom of the Sun alive. A special thanks goes out to everyone out there who has collected the production art, asked the hard questions, and made as much of this story available to us as is possible. If you like the show, please let people know any way that you can. It would mean the world to me. Until next time, bye.